Hi there and welcome. It's Jennifer McGuire and I hope your week is off to a good start. Well, today I thought I would share with you a fun way to create a clear panel on a card along with heat embossing. I've made many different clear panel type cards in the past, and I'll link to a few of those videos here. However, this time I thought it'd be fun to incorporate some layered heat embossing. I'm going to start with these wreath cards that I've shown here, and at the end I'll have this bonus card, so be sure to stick around for that. Let's get started with the wreath cards. I'm using this large Concord and Ninth Magnolia wreath set. I like this set because it includes these two layering images that are easy to line up thanks to a little perk that this stamp set has, which I'll show you in a moment. There are some beautiful sentiments that can be used year-round, and also there are little accent images that will give you a bunch of different looks to this wreath so that you can use it year-round. I also like that there's a coordinating die set available, and if you look at this one die here, this actually cuts out one of the images right up to the edge. It cuts out this image here right up to the edge so that you can add that on top of the wreath for additional dimension. I didn't use that today, but I like that that option is there. So what's cool about this layering set, I'm starting with the first bottom image of the wreath. See those little pieces sticking out the top and the bottom? Those help you to line up. So what I'm going to do is put my stamp into my MISTI stamp positioner, and I have those little arrows pointing up and down. And I'm going to just put that into my MISTI. This is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece of white cardstock. I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool, ink this up with Versamark ink, and then I will heat emboss this with a beautiful green kind of metallic embossing powder. Now, the advantage of those little arrow pieces that stick up and down is that it helps you line up the next image and the coordinating dies. However, those little arrows pointing up and down don't actually stamp themselves. It's just a little extra of the stamp on the background, but it does not stamp, as you can see here. Now, I'm making several cards in today's video. I wanted to make a bunch of examples, so I'm going to repeat this process on a few other pieces of colored cardstock so that I have a few pieces ready to go. Next, I need to heat emboss that same image in the exact same place on a piece of acetate. Now, there are a few different types of acetate that you can use for heat embossing, and one that I've tried recently that I really like is the Judikins Embossable Window. Now, you want to make sure to use your anti-static powder tool on this so that we get a clean, crisp, heat embossed image. I'm inking my stamp up and stamping it with Versamark ink, and this will actually stamp in the exact same location on this acetate as it did on the cardstock, so that we can line it up to make our card nicely in a few moments. I'm adding my embossing powder here. I'm going to let my heat gun get very hot before I bring it to the acetate. This minimizes the amount of time necessary to heat and melt all the powder so that I don't have any warping. And this is really cool because I end up with a wreath in the exact same position on this acetate as that cardstock piece, so they line up nicely, which you'll see here. Now, you could use any embossing powders for this. This green is just beautiful. I really like that it has some subtle shine to it. Okay, so I did that on a few pieces of acetate since we're making a few cards. And now it's time to do the second layer of the wreath on all of these pieces. So remember those little pieces that stuck out the top of the first layer image? Well, they're in the same location for the second. So I know that the small arrow points up, the bigger arrow points down, and that helps me to line that up better. Because that way I don't have to keep spinning the stamp to try to get the leaves to line up. Those little keys are perfect for helping me get this in no time flat. Now, I didn't use them in this video, but the coordinating dies also have those little arrows that don't cut. They're just there on the metal to help you line up the coordinating die also. Now, on some of my wreaths, I did the second layer of embossing with the Hero Arts white pearl satin embossing powder. This picks up whatever colors underneath and gives it a metallic look. So here you can see it's kind of like a silvery green layer of embossing on top of the first layer that we put down. Absolutely beautiful. Now, on some of the other cards, I decided to change up the embossing powder for the second layer, and I used instead the Judikins Sparkle Iridescent Embossing Powder. So this is basically a clear powder with lots of iridescent sparkle in it, so that we'll end up with lots of glittery shine on top of those leaves. So you can see the second layer actually just adds stamping to kind of half of each of the leaf. So you could do like shading or whatever. I decided to do the specialty embossing powders on top. So you can see for this example, I have a bunch of sparkle to my leaves. So it's just a different option. I couldn't decide which to do, so I decided to do a few cards with each. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing with my acetate pieces. So I'm going to stamp that second layer, and then I'll heat emboss with the same embossing powders. On some I'll use that satin pearl, and on some I'll use the glitter embossing powder. And remember, because I'm using the MISTI, the stamping will be in the perfect location on each of our pieces so that they'll line up nicely together. So now I have one cardstock heat emboss piece and one acetate heat emboss piece for each of my cards. So now we can go ahead and turn these into cards. I need to cut away that little middle section across the center there, right behind the word Season of Thanks. So what I need to do is get my pieces ready and then cut that section away. I have trimmed down all my heat emboss pieces, both the cardstock and acetate pieces, to be 4 by 5 1/4. So it's slightly smaller than the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note cards that we've created. I'm holding the heat emboss cardstock panel to the front of my note card here, and I'm cutting a section out. So it actually cuts the panel itself where I've heat embossed and the note card. And I was holding it right there nice and centered so that the pieces are ready to be assembled with the acetate piece sandwiched between. I cut about 1 1/4 inch out from the front of my card and the stamped panel. You can cut away as much as you want. So now I just trimmed a little bit of the excess off of our clear heat emboss piece here, just because it didn't need to be full size. And now I'm putting some strong double-sided tape on the back of our heat emboss panel that goes on the top of the card. I'm going to line up our stamped image with the acetate piece and glue it to the back. So the image just lines up completely, so it's continuous, going from the cardstock to the acetate. Now I can put some more double-sided tape on the back of that, and I'm going to glue it to the top of our note card, right onto that little blue panel that you see sticking up there on the top. Now what this is doing is sandwiching that acetate piece between the note card and the heat embossed panel, and the heat embossed image lines up and is continuous between the cardstock and the acetate. I do recommend using a strong adhesive for this. I think a double-sided tape is best since we're gluing it to acetate. And I really like this Be Creative tape. I find it works very well. Now I've put some double-sided tape on the back of the bottom of the heat emboss panel. Line it up with our acetate once again. Press that down. And now we're going to put some more double-sided tape on the back. So I'm pretty generous with the double-sided tape on this because I want it to stay together. After all, this is the front of our note card. Okay, so now we have one more piece to glue on and then our card is assembled. We just need to put that blue piece for the note card on the back here. So I flipped it open, putting some more double-sided tape down, and then we'll add the blue piece. I find the best way to make sure that it all lines up nicely is to put the blue piece right here on the bottom of our card, just put it there just to hold in place and close the adhesive onto it. And check it out, we have a complete note card now with a clear opening in the middle that is just really fun and different. So now we can add our sentiment and our embellishments, and that's it for these cards. Now I decided to use a die cut sentiment on the top of this, but you could heat emboss right onto that clear panel any sentiment you wanted to. The die set that I chose to use is the Concord & Ninth Season of Cheer die set, and this has so many sentiments that you can build together using these dies. You have the word season, cheer, and then the apostrophe S, so you can make seasons, and then there are all these little banner pieces that it die cuts that you can use to create different greetings. I'm going to use Season of Thanks for today's cards. Now I wanted these die cuts to have some dimension to them so that they stand out on the card. So I am taking white cardstock and backing it with Stick It double-sided adhesive. This is a very thin double-sided adhesive that you can die cut. So I'm basically creating white cardstock with a sticky back. Now what I will do is die cut 3 of the word season and 3 of the banner that says of thanks. Each one of them will have the adhesive on the back. Now since that Stick It double-sided adhesive is very thin, it will die cut with no problem. So now I can remove the release paper from the back of the die cut words and stack them on top of each other. So I end up with the word season that's very thick with lots of dimension, and it'll stand out on the card. And I did the same for the banner that says of thanks. So now I can remove the last piece of release paper from the back of the stacked die cut and stick it onto my card. Now with Stick It double-sided adhesive, you need to press very, very firmly to make sure that it sticks. That's actually a good thing because you can move things around quite a bit to make sure you have the positioning just right before it sticks down. So once I'm happy with where these are both positioned, I'm using my bone folder to really press them in place so that they will stay put. Now I wasn't sure which color of Nuvo drops I wanted to use for berries, so here's a little trick that I do all the time. I keep little pieces of clear plastic packaging or scrap acetate, and then I can put drops on them, pick it up and put it on my card and see how it looks on the card without actually having to put it on the card itself. So here I'm just testing out a few different options. I do this quite often and it really saves me from messing up a card. So I'm trying out the different colors on the card, and I decided to do this first one with silver drops, and I did all the other with red. Now I want little clusters of berries, so I want some of these to be very close to each other. But sometimes when you put down wet drops, if you put 2 drops too close to each other, they meet in the middle and make a blob. So what I did is I did a first round of dots, let them dry almost completely, then I came and did the second round of drops very close to the first. That way I can be sure they keep their shape and dry nicely. Now you can see here the metallic also. Remember how I used that white pearl embossing powder on the leaves? You can see how that really pulls out that silver of the berries. So here are the final cards. This one is the pool note card with the white panel on the front and the white sentiments. And then the silver Nuvo drops and that white pearl embossing powder on top of the green. So this is probably my favorite of all the examples. This one uses craft paper. I really like craft with green and red for holiday cards. Now this again has green embossing with the white pearl embossing on the second layer and red Nuvo drops. And I really like how you can see through the center of that wreath. Here I did a pool cardstock and again the white pearl for the second layer of the wreath. But then for this next card, I used the glitter embossing powder. So you can see the difference. This one's metallic, so you can see that metallic look. This time I have the glitter embossing powder on the leaves. So there's a little bit of sparkle to it. It's very subtle, but I think that's best when you have so much going on the card already. Now before we go, I wanted to show you one more card. It's very different, but it also features like an acetate panel or a clear part to the card. And it uses some fun products that I was really excited to use. This is the Concord and Ninth Thanks Turnabout background stamp. Now I have used many turnabout background stamps in the past, and I'll link to a couple videos here. But these are fantastic backgrounds that are designed so you can stamp them 4 times, rotating in between each stamp, so you can cover a background in multiple colors. Now when you use the turnabout stamp, you need to create a turntable to help you do the stamping. You can create the turntable using the key that's on the packaging, or as I'm doing here, I printed out a key on the Concord and Ninth website. Now what I need to do is put an X on the back of my stamp at the same position that the X is on that printout. So I line my stamp up with the images underneath, and I create an X on the back of my stamp, lined up perfectly with the X on the printout. So now on the back of my stamp, I have an X. It doesn't damage my stamp at all, but it really helps a lot with these stamps. I also need to create a turntable that I will keep and use anytime I use this stamp set. This is a 6x6 piece of paper, and I'm just going to put an X on the front of it by connecting the corners. So now I'm going to use a stamping tool and put my turntable right into the corner. Then I'm going to line up the X on my stamp with the X on the turntable and close my MISTI. So now it's time to do the stamping. So I'm going to temporarily adhere a piece of white cardstock to my turntable. This is the paper I'll stamp on. So I'm going to start with my first color and stamp it. This is Hero Art Soft Pool. And I'm going to stamp that onto the paper. Then I will rotate my whole turntable. Then I can move on to the second color. So what you do is use a different color each time, or you can use the same if you wanted to, but be sure to rotate in between each stamping. So you'll stamp it 4 times, rotating in between each, and before you'll know it, you'll have a piece of cardstock covered with thanks greetings. This is a really fun way to quickly make a background for a card. I use 2 shades of pool, a soft brown, and a red for this background. And remember, you only need to create that turntable once, and you can reuse it over and over again. Now we can create that clear window. I first took my stamped background and trimmed it down a bit so it's 4 by 5 1/4. Next, I'm going to use the Concord & Ninth Many Thanks die set. See that large word bubble there? I'm going to die cut that from the front of our stamped panel. This will create the window for our acetate piece. So I'm just going to use a piece of temporary tape to tape the die in place, and I'll run it through my die cut machine. After I've run it through the machine, I'm going to hold it on to the front of my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card, just right in position. I'm going to take the die, pop it into place, right where it should be. Then I will put some tape to hold it onto the note card, and I'll pull away our stamped piece. Then I'll run this through the die cut machine. This way I will have the speech bubble cut on the note card in the same position as my stamped panel. I couldn't get the die to cut through both layers, so that's why I did one at a time. Now on the back of our stamped panel, I'm putting some adhesive and adding a piece of acetate here. I decided not to do any stamping on this one, so I'm just using the clear acetate alone. You could use clear packaging to do this, to recycle. Now I'm putting more adhesive on the back, and I'm going to glue that onto the front of our card. So we have acetate sandwiched between the card and our stamped panel. Next, I'm just going to add the little white outline that die created. See how you got this little white outline? I'm going to glue that to the front of the acetate window just for a finished look. I also used that thanks word die cut to cut the little letters for the word thanks, and I stacked a few on top of each other. I wanted to glue them onto the acetate window, but I wanted to get the spacing just right, so I took the negative space and temporarily taped it onto the card. Then I popped all my letters in place, glue them right down, press them firmly down onto the acetate. Now I can remove that temporary tape and remove my negative space, and now my letters are all positioned perfectly. That's a great trick for getting them straight and positioned just right with enough space in between each. So now I have the thanks die cut floating on that acetate window. I also added a little red heart covered with glossy accents to the thanks, just for a little bit of interest. So this card came together very quickly. I could have made it even faster by just heat embossing the word thanks onto that little window, but I decided to use the die cuts instead. So there you have a few different ways to create a clear element on your cards. I hope this was inspiring to you. All the supplies are linked in my YouTube description below as always, but go to my blog for more information, and I will link to some of the other card ideas I've done with clear elements. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll come back soon and have a great week.